So Musashi gets invited to the castle. Jotaro returns to the inn where Musashi and the Yoshiokis are, and he comes back all scarred up from a dog within the castle. So Jotaro takes that scarring as a sign that a wounded samurai must avenge his wounds. So Musashi prepares to go to the castle with Jotaro, and they go in there and they meet with the 4 retainers. It's Kazemon, Murata, Debuchi, and Kimura. And while Musashi is with the 4 samurais within the castle, Jotaro disappears. So Musashi knows that he's not going to be able to fight Shekishusai because he's basically retired and fights nobody. Musashi, he's in a different mindset where he wants to fight, and the 4 retainers are more curious about his keen observation of the Peony, but they have no wish to battle or teach Musashi anything at this point. So 2 different mindsets. The Yagyus are just calm, and Musashi has an itch about him that he needs to scratch. This leads him to a series of decisions which are somewhat of a folly in his demeanor. So here we go. From the light of the low lamp shining in the garden, he saw trellises of blooming wisteria vines, both white and lavender. The sweetest scent of wisteria was in the air. He was startled by the croak of a frog, the first he had heard that year. Water gurgled somewhere in the garden. The stream apparently ran under the building, for after he was settled, he noticed the sound of flowing water beneath him. Indeed, before long it seemed to him that the sound of water was coming from the walls, the ceiling, even the lamp. He felt cold and relaxed, yet simmering deep inside him there was an unsuppressible sense of disquiet. It was his insatiable fighting spirit coursing through his veins, even in this quiet atmosphere. So there you go. He's in the peaceful castle. Something stirs about him. Anyway, the samurai come in. Kimura, Debuchi, Murata, and Kazemon. They're all there questioning him. Musashi's trying to pick a fight, in other words. So he tries to tell the guys, hey, I sensed something about the Peony, and it was a feeling, right? So it's hard for him to communicate with these samurai. So anyway, here we go. This feeling of yours, repeated Kazemon. Can you tell us more about it? You know, this building, the Shin Indu, was built expressly for Lord Kazumi of Isle to stay in during his visits. It's an important building in the history of swordsmanship. It's a fitting place for us to hear a lecture from you tonight. Realizing that protesting their flattery was not going to get him off the hook, Musashi decided to take the plunge. When you sense something, you sense it, he said. There's really no way to explain it. If you want me to demonstrate what I mean, you'll have to unsheathe your sword and face me in a match. There's no other way. So there you have it. He needs to test himself against the Yagyus, but these guys are they're not even in the mood. They're bringing him food, they're serving him sake, but Musashi's in a fighting mode. Unfortunately, Musashi has Jotaro, and Jotaro has disappeared. And the samurai notice a barking dog. So here we go. The barking grew more urgent. The dog was apparently trying to give warning of some danger. When one of the castle's dog acted this way, it was almost a sure sign something untoward was going on. The peace the country was enjoying was not so secure that a daimyo could afford to relax his vigilance against neighboring fiefs. There were still unscrupulous warriors who might stoop to anything to satisfy their own ambition, and spies roamed the land searching out complacent, invulnerable targets. Kazemon seemed extremely upset. He kept staring at the ominous light of the lamp as if counting the echoes of the unearthly noise. Eventually there was one long mournful wail. Kazemon grunted and looked at Musashi. He's dead, said Musashi. Yes, he's been killed. No longer able to contain himself, Kazemon stood up. I can't understand it. He started to leave, but Musashi stopped him, saying, Wait, is Jotaro, the boy who came with me, still in the waiting room? They directed their inquiry to a young samurai in front of the Shin Indu. who after searching reported the boy was nowhere to be found. So, Jotaro takes it upon himself to seek revenge for his wound and his scar. He's got a scar on his face from the dog from the earlier encounter, so he takes revenge as a samurai would. This causes a mayhem of chaos. Not only is he within the castle and there's a bunch of samurai there, now the killing of the dog triggers a reaction of the people in charge of the dog. This is the dog of the Lord or Shekisuzai's dog, but they're charged with caring for the dog, so whatever happens to the dog is inevitably going to happen to the keeper. So the keepers are just irate. So here we go. The slaying of the animal would consequently be investigated thoroughly, and the fate of the two samurai who had been paid to take care of the dog was now in jeopardy. The man now facing Jotaro was one of these two men. "Shut up," he shouted, aiming his fist at Jotaro's head. This time Jotaro did not duck in time. The blow landed in the vicinity of his ear. Jotaro raised his hand and felt his wound. "What are you doing?" he screamed. "You killed the master's dog. You don't mind if I beat you to death the same way, do you? Because that's exactly what I'm going to do. All I did was get even with him. Why punish me for that? A grown man should know that's not right." In Jotaro's view, he had only protected his honor and risked his life in doing so, for a visible wound was a great disgrace to a samurai. To defend his pride, there was no alternative to killing the dog. Indeed, in all likelihood, he had expected to be praised for his valiant conduct. He stood his ground, determined not to flinch. "Shut your imprudent mouth," screamed the keeper. "I don't care if you are only a child. You're old enough to know the difference between a dog and a human being. The very idea, taking revenge on a dumb animal." He grabbed Jotaro's collar, looked to the crowd for approval, and declared it his duty to punish the dog's murderer. The crowd silently nodded in agreement. The four men, who had recently been entertaining Musashi, looked distressed but said nothing. "Bark, boy, bark like a dog," the keeper shouted. He swung Jotaro around and around by his collar. With a black look in his eyes, threw him to the ground. Seizing an oak staff, he raised it above his head, ready to strike. "You killed the dog, you little hoodlum. Now it's your turn. Stand up so I can kill you. Bark, bite me." Teeth tightly clenched, Jotaro propped himself up on one arm and struggled to his feet, wooden sword in hand. His features had not lost his sprite-like quality, but the expression in his face was anything but childlike, and the howl that issued from his throat was eerily savage. When an adult gets angry, he often regrets it later. But when a child's wrath is aroused, not even the mother who brought him into the world can placate him. "Kill me," he screamed. "Go on, kill me." "Die then," raged the keeper. He struck. The blow would have killed the boy if it had connected, but it didn't. A sharp crack reverberated in the ears of the bystanders. Jotaro's wooden sword went flying through the air. Without thinking about it, he had parried the keeper's blow. Weaponless, he closed his eyes and charged blindly at the enemy's midriff, latching onto the man's obi with his teeth. Holding on for dear life, he tore with his nails at the keeper's groin, while the keeper made futile swings with his staff. Musashi had remained silent, arms folded and face expressionless. Then another oak staff appeared. A second man had dashed into the ring and was on the verge of attacking Jotaro from behind. Musashi moved into action. His arms came down and in no time he forced his way through the solid wall of men in the arena. "Coward," he shouted at the second man. An oak stick and two legs described an arc in the air, coming to rest in a clump about 4 yards away. Musashi shouted, "And now for you, you little devil." Gripping Jotaro's obi with his hand, he lifted the boy above his head and held him there. Turning to the keeper, who was taking a fresh grip on his staff, he said, "I've been watching this from the start, and I think you're going about it the wrong way. This boy is my servant, and if you're going to question him, you ought to question me too." In fiery tones, the keepers answered, "All right, we'll do that. We'll question the two of you. Good, we'll take you on together. Now, here's the boy." He threw Jotaro straight at them. The crowd let out an appalled gasp and fell back. Was the man mad? Whoever heard of using a human being as a weapon against another human being? The keeper stared in disbelief as Jotaro sailed through the air and rammed into his chest. The man fell straight back as though a prop holding him up had been removed. It was difficult to tell whether he had struck his head against a rock or whether his ribs had been broken. Hitting the ground with a howl, he began vomiting blood. Jotaro bounced off the man's chest, did a somersault in the air, and rolled like a ball to a point 20 or 30 feet away. "Did you see that?" a man shouted. "Who is this crazy Ronin?" The fracas no longer involved only the dog's keeper. The other samurai began ambushing Musashi. Most of them were unaware that Musashi was an invited guest, and several suggested killing him then and there. "Now," said Musashi, "everybody listen." They watched closely as he took Jotaro's wooden sword in his hand and faced them, a terrifying scroll across his face. "The child's crime is his master's crime. We are both prepared to pay for it. But first, let me tell you this. We have no intention of letting ourselves being killed like dogs. We are prepared to take you on." Yep, so with that, Musashi inevitably gets to challenge the entire castle. Finds out that these samurais do not play. So the samurai, the retainers there, figure out the space. And yeah, so it's 4 against 1. Kimura says, "Hey, let's go. Me and you one-on-one." But eventually Musashi realizes that these are real samurai, real deal strong, good with their art, and he realizes this is a bad idea, and he escapes. Doesn't end up getting a lesson or a bout, but he does realize he made a mistake, so which is good because he saves the boy's life. In other words, that's the only good part that comes out of this, is that he did save his pupil from a disastrous encounter with some samurai. What led up to this is Musashi was so focused on getting into the castle that he didn't really pay attention to Jotaro and what Jotaro was doing, and he didn't even tell him that they were going to the castle. He didn't prep him and say, "Hey, you're going to want to be on your best behavior," whatever. So yes, it is his fault. It's Musashi's fault. So he does take somewhat of the blame and the responsibility for Jotaro, his so-called pupil. Yeah, here, if you were going to ask me what the moral of this chapter is basically a leader is responsible for his followers. A teacher, yeah, your kids are failing. They're failing because you're a bad teacher, right? Parents, pay attention. Peace.